Okay, Senator Molan.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Mr Carrigy-Ryan, for your appearance here today. Mr Carrigy-Ryan, super is certainly a contentious topic amongst the veteran community. My personal experience of Defence Super and Commonwealth Super is a very, very positive one, but I find it hard to defend ComSuper because of the allegation that is continually made towards me that I receive special attention because I retired at a senior rank. So I'm very keen this morning for us to talk directly from you, to hear directly from you on a number of issues of super. I'd like to talk about commutation issues, the roles of CSC, the linking within the veteran community particularly those who appear before the family court, how that impacts on veteran superannuation, and the conflating of disability pensions and even as far as TPI issues. I wonder, Mr Carrigy-Ryan, if firstly you would describe ComSuper and what it does in relation to veteran superannuation, please.
Certainly, Senator. Commonwealth Superannuation Corporation was formed in 2011 by the merger of two boards, one that looked after superannuation schemes for public servants, and the military board which looked after superannuation for military personnel. And there are three categories of member whom we look after. They are contributing members, so current members, preserved members, and pensioners. Easiest way to understand those categories, Senator, of the roughly 730,000 members that we have in those three categories, it's almost a third, a third, a third. So a third contributors, a third preserved, and a third pensioner. We have a reasonably large workforce of about 470 people. We have two offices in Canberra and Sydney, and we have representatives in Adelaide, Melbourne and Brisbane. Our military engagement is extremely high priority for us for each of those categories of members in both closed schemes, for example DFRDB, military super, and open schemes, our new ADF super scheme that was started in 2016. A lot of my staff take extremely serious the role they play and try as very best they can to provide the best service they can to our military members. They are cognizant of their role in community, what they do for society and how they do it, and what that earns them in terms of how we deal with them, which is a high level of respect and high level of regard. In that way, because of what we do, we come into play with a number of areas of government, a number of policy things where superannuation may happen to be, if you will, the flashpoint for a lot of those issues. And they might be taxation issues, they might be family law, they might be child support, there might be issues around benefit entitlement. In all of those cases, we do our very best to administer the law and the rules that we are provided with. We are both a statutory corporation created by the Parliament, but also a regulated superannuation trustee. So we are licensed by ASIC and APRA to do what we do. And I think it's important for everybody, and we try to explain this as best we can and very often, that the rules that we administer are largely not made by us. They are legislative in our schemes, and that may be either by an act of Parliament or by a trust deed that is made by a minister. So they are legislative instruments, in other words. The taxation laws that we apply, the family laws we apply, are laws that apply to members of every superannuation fund in Australia, Senator.
And compared to other superannuation funds with 730,000 members, you must be about the biggest.
Oh, we're one of the larger funds, yes. We probably have, after the age pension, the second largest pension payroll in Australia. We pay 230,000 pensions roughly every fortnight to APS and military, former military and APS staff. So yes, we are fairly large in that regard, Senator.
And you work in, as you said, very, very well with many other areas of government and institutions within this country, and certainly veterans, this government certainly sees veterans as important. I think we spend something like $11 billion on DVA, out of DVA, and we support 180,000, several hundred thousand members through DVA, and we've just put before the Parliament a covenant. You mentioned that your staff take their role very seriously. What is the defence part of your business worth in dollar terms? Can you put a dollar term on it?
In terms of there are two parts of that, Senator. There is a part where we get an amount of income from government, which is of the order of $70 million per annum. The rest of the money to run our organisation is from the funds that we manage. So our total business cost is approximately $420 million per annum. Of that, that $70 million is paid for defined benefit scheme administration,
yep,
both military and APS. For each of those, we have teams of people that will do benefit assessments, benefit information, claims, pension payments, invalidity, all of those sorts of functions. So the exact dollar split I haven't got with me as between what we would spend on our military as compared to our APS members, but I can certainly get that for you, Senator.
If you could, I'd certainly appreciate that. In the community in which I exist, it certainly is a contentious point. Often they're not aware of how much goes into supporting them, either through DVA or through yourself.
Sure.
Just going back to who you mentioned that, I'd just like to emphasise the point or get a view from you as to the fact that exactly who sets out the rules of your schemes and how much discretion do you have in the application, the implementation or application of those rules?
That will vary according to schemes, Senator, but by and large the rules that we operate with are fairly prescriptive. They are prescriptive because they are legislative instruments. They need to be exact. They are, in effect, policy outcomes of governments over many years are represented in those rules, and they, in effect, determine the entitlement that a member will
Yes.
have to a benefit, and the way in which we go about calculating that. There is, of course, surrounded that with some legal advice and interpretation that has occurred over a period of time. That would be the case with schemes, whether they be actual statutes or whether they would be subordinate legislation. So there is a body of practice, if you will, that has developed over a considerable period of time. This organisation and its predecessors have been around since 1922. So there is a fair body of history going with what we do.
Could people become confused by seeing how modern industry super and other commercial superannuation organisations work and carrying that back over to how you work?
I suppose we operate in both worlds, Senator. We have contemporary superannuation products that we offer to people in the marketplace.
What's an example of that, please?
ADF Super. Is that's a
the
modern
2016 one?
Yes, correct. That's a defined contribution scheme where an amount of money is paid into an account. The member is free to join us or any other super fund that they wish. We also have an insurance component that goes with that called ADF Cover that was built at the same time that came in because, as you'd be aware, our military members are not typically insurable in the general market.
Yes.
So that would be, in terms of straightforward, that would be a relatively straightforward scheme, as would PSSAP, which is a defined contribution scheme for public servants. More complex around defined benefit schemes that have inbuilt disability insurance that comes as part of them, pensions for life with reversionary benefits, and old, some of them, dating back quite a number of years. Complex, yes. There is a fair degree of expertise that is required to run and administer them, Senator. That is the nature of defined benefits globally,
Yes.
if I can say.
So you are a mix.
Yes, they are. They are complex schemes. And if you think about it, in the days when those schemes were open, a member joined government or joined military. They had no option but to join those schemes.
Yep.
And they were involved with that scheme for their life, in effect.
And that was a well-intentioned
Absolutely, well-intentioned
attitude towards
yes.
it. Yeah.
And the tail of these schemes, Senator, is, I probably shouldn't say this with the Minister sitting next to me, but the tail is very long.
Yeah.
3 years ago, there was a benefit still being paid from the American Civil War.
So I believe.
They do have longevity.
What? Thank you for that. And what kind of complaints do you receive from veterans? And can you give us any examples of those?
I can actually give you some information on that I have with me, Senator, if you'll just bear with me. The key complaints, and I've got some numbers that I can provide to you, but I won't detail them now. They're the ones that I mentioned, the key complaints, Senator. They're around taxation, family law, child support, and DFRDB commutation.
Commutation, and you don't get the complaints directly on disability pensions, do you? Disability support pensions? Because they seem to be conflated quite often with super.
Yes, we often those complaints can go to a few different people or organisations who are involved in the process. But
you're not responsible for disability support pensions?
Disability support
payments.
pensions, no, not outside the realm of our scheme. We are responsible for military invalidity pensions, yes.
Okay.
That's right. But not
so is my terminology correct?
Yes, as far as I understand.
Disability support payments.
Yes.
Okay. At the end of, say, are you able to give us, and if you have to go back on to do it on notice, at the end of 2017-18 financial years, can you give us the number of complaints you received and the numbers that were outstanding at the end of those years?
I can give you that information. In fact, it's in our annual report to Parliament, Senator. This is done by scheme. Military super, so this is 2017-18 on page 71. In 2016-17, there were 188 complaints received.
188 complaints received, good.
2017-18, there was 155. DFRDB, in 2016-17, there was 21. And in 17-18, there were 25.
So on the scale of your transactions with your customers, would you describe them as large numbers?
No, they're fairly small, Senator, given the member bases with which we deal.
How do you classify a complaint as resolved?
There's probably three stages when I think about it. So we get a complaint and we see if we can resolve it by obviously talking and negotiating with the member about it, understanding what the issue is. If that is not satisfactory, there are appellate rights that we have. So we have reconsideration committees internally that are staffed by external staff to hear those complaints. There is, of course, other avenues such as the Superannuation Complaints Tribunal or the new Complaints Tribunal.
Financial Complaints Tribunal.
And of course, there's always the option for people to litigate. So A complaint, I suppose, if you take it from that point to the end, can have various stopping points, if you will, and resolution points.
So if a complainant if you advise, or the complainant arrives at the point where they appeal externally to you, is that listed as resolved?
No, it's not resolved because it's outstanding. The member has not been satisfied with whatever has been provided. The complaint is still there, and we, of course, would be a party to that complaint or appellate process, Senator, that the member engaged in.
And how many, are you able to provide now or at a later date, how many cases were referred to the Superannuation Complaints Tribunal or the Australian Financial Complaints Authority in each financial year, the last couple of financial years?
I can read. I've got those numbers if you bear with me, Senator.
Thank you.
So in 2016-17, this is total numbers, Senator. This is not just military.
Sure.
This is CSC.
Okay.
Is that of interest to you, or do you want me to get just the military ones?
The military ones,
okay.
If I may, please.
In that case,
sorry, can you give me the total ones? I think that would be interesting.
So this is SCT, Administrative Appeals Tribunal, and courts in 16-17.
Yeah.
So SCT is 38, AAT is 11, and court cases are 12. Total of 61. I've got other detail here, Senator, that I won't go through about decision confirmed, withdrawn, etc., but I can provide a list to you. 17-18 financial year, this is cases received, 33 for the SCT, 6 for the AAT, and 4 for court proceedings. And AFCA, which you mentioned before, which is the new appellate body. So this is since inception on the 1st of November 2018. We've had a total of 7, but 21 were pre-AFCA, if you will, from the SCT, so a total of 28.
Okay, thank you.
And the difference with those now, Senator, with that new body is that you don't have to finalise internal dispute or complaint settling procedures to go to that complaint body. So in other words, the first we may hear of a complaint is when we get a communication from that body.
Thank you. And some of the complaints that have gone to litigation or administrative review processes, I remember but cannot recall in detail statements made by judges in relation to these. Can you recall those? And to the performance of the CSC?
Oh, there was one of the cases that was run last year. The comments were very complimentary, Senator. I don't want to sit here and tell you how wonderful we are, but the judge was very complimentary. We didn't pursue costs or whatever in relation to that matter. From a what we are and what we do, we're a fiduciary. The last place we want to be is in a court.
What do you mean by fiduciary? I'm sorry.
Well, we look after other people's money.
Gotcha.
And we look after an important part of their life, which is their retirement.
Yep.
And arguing something in a court with one of effectively our customers or clients or members is not a place that we like to be. And we don't like to be in any dispute mechanism, but of course we've got appellate mechanisms that our members must use.
Well, before getting on to the conflation of family law court, in the family law court of super, disability payments, etc., can I take you to the current issue around commutation, please? And I would refer you to a lot of the information that came out in a couple of months ago, in fact, about a month ago or so, but it's been running for a couple of months now, where veterans accuse federal government of ripping off, in inverted commas, thousands from retirement benefits, come through the ABC Sunshine Coast, and quotes one of our true heroes, Lieutenant Colonel Harry Smith, who has looked at commutation in a particular way and claims the government owes him $5,000. I get these complaints, $5,000. I get these complaints all the time, CEO, and they're certainly passionately held, but I haven't seen, and I might just be missing it, I haven't seen a rebuttal or an explanation of those. What's your view? And the basic issue is that if a veteran in his super elected to commute a certain number of years of his pension in order to fund himself into a residence when he leaves the military, when he or she leaves the military, their pension is reduced going into the future. And there seems to be now an expectation that I certainly wasn't aware of, that at a certain stage, having paid that commutation back, your pension would then rise. And there seems to be a belief that by the age of 72, that should have occurred.
To the best of my knowledge, Senator, I'm not aware of any legal basis for a claim to have that entitlement changed in those circumstances that you just mentioned. Again, as I said to you earlier, we are administrators of the rules. That's our interpretation. It has been long-standing. There is an old AAT case in relation to that specific matter, and my recollection is that case held that the position was as I've just explained it. So let's assume that is the case.
Sorry,
as you have just mentioned it, yes, there is no legal basis for making a claim for a pension to be increased in those circumstances. If that is the case, then it seems to me there's a policy question which is beyond my gambit to engage in or comment on. But if military members feel that their entitlements are not what they should be, then there are all sorts of processes that can be gone through to have that matter heard, debated and whatever. In my case, I administer a set of rules, as I said to you earlier. We administer those based on the best advice we can get and on the basis of our concern and care for our members. But at the end of the day, that is what it is, and that's how we've got to apply it.
Would you be prepared, and to me it does seem unfair that there does seem to be somewhere in this argument an unfairness. Would you be prepared to meet with these people and provide them at least with the technical expertise and the history if veterans groups wanted to take this forward?
I'm happy to do that, Senator. In fact, I'm meeting with a group of veterans organisations in Brisbane on Thursday.
Oh, good.
I have regular meetings with the DFWA, and I think they are very... I understand their agenda. I think they understand my position in relation to them, and they understand what our role is in this structure, and there's not much more I can do than that.
No, and I think all they'd be requiring from you would be the technical history, etc., and then they can carry whatever they would like to do to carry forward. And Chair, I've got one more point, and that's all.
Thank you, Senator Moore.
I'd like to finish by talking in particular about family law judgments and their impact on superannuation and invalidity pensions, because this is something which is regularly raised with me. It's only partially in your area, but with many veterans, and we could use this to explain it, with many veterans, the issues who find themselves before a family court and where assets are split, find that where a wife receives part of the pension, part of the asset and a disability pension, the disability pension can be severely reduced as a member regains health and no longer suffers the disability, but the family court direction remains in being for the spouse. Have you struck this?
We come across people who are aggrieved, obviously, Senator,
yes,
by family law splits, particularly in the case of invalidity benefits. The advice that we have worked on for quite some time is that these pensions are splittable by the family court, and we are, of course, subject to family law orders. And there are, I've got some statistics if you would like them, there's lots of them in all of the schemes that we are responsible for.
If we wanted to contest this, where could we take it?
I think the starting point that I would have is if I was trying to have a discussion about it is the policy question.
Absolutely.
And the policy question simply, if it can be simplified thus, is should there be any divisibility of an invalidity pension in circumstances where there is a marital breakup? That's a hard policy question.
It is.
That's not in
No,
my...
it's not yours.
And my views on that
Yeah.
are irrelevant, bluntly.
No.
But it is a difficult policy issue.
It is.
And it would go across a whole range of policy departments in the Commonwealth, I would assume.
And Minister, was that something we could bring to you in due course?
You can always bring policy suggestions to us in due course, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'd like to conclude, if I could, just by saying that the concern that I have is that veterans who, in many circumstances, have a perceived or an actual disadvantage, a perceived disadvantage or unfairness or an actual disadvantage, particularly in areas that don't apply to you. I'm aware that this is not your area directly, but as a manager of the system that the ComSuper Corporation applies, you've often been the target of veterans' concern. And I will certainly take to the Minister the policy challenge on behalf of various veterans. And I certainly have been greatly assisted in the last couple of months by both DVA office and Minister Cormann's office and by talking to you. But are there any... do you see it as part of your job to take any of these friction points back to government, not as an advocate for veterans, but as an advocate for a better manipulation and management of the scheme?
I think my role in that would be to let government know and policymakers know that there are points of pain and there are points of concern and there are points of argument. That's my job, to let them know that's out there amongst our member community.
Can you do that?
I can certainly do that and do it, Senator.
Thank you. And could I be made aware of...
Sure.
Thank you very
Absolutely.
much. Chair, that's all I've got.
Thank you, Senator Molan.
Thank you.
Are there